Hey everyone, welcome to the program WRSA Radio. I'm your host G1. As always, I hope you're having a good week. It's been a busy one for me, busy. Let's jump right into the program for today. Last night, the president spoke about Iran. It was nothing, basically. Probably the most mundane, boring, and uninspiring speech the president has ever given, which kind of solidifies two things for me. One, it tells me in no uncertain terms that the president is not acting on his own accord, on his own drives and goals. He's completely operating at the whim and behest of Israel, and that the U.S. has no real goals in this conflict. And number two, the president is done with it. He wants to be out of this as soon as possible. The political fallout from this is too much. And he's going to wrap it up very soon, likely as soon as Israel secures the territory in Lebanon that they have been working on. So basically what I've been seeing for a few weeks unfolding here is pretty much, at least for me anyway, confirmed by this speech. I do not see the U.S. ground troops going in on this operation. I see them more as a decoy, a card on the table that the president really just doesn't have any intent to use. It's a threat that is out there for Iran to have to deal with. I suspect that they're kind of dangling them out there in order to keep Iran guessing, pin their forces in place. Iran can't move troops all over the place to try to hide them, shift tanks from here to here and this and that. They have no idea where possible troops might land, so they kind of have to keep all of their options open to be ready to respond to things. And that means that the U.S. has a better chance of catching them in positions that they can be bombed. It seems logical to me, but, I could be completely off base with this idea. There's no clear-cut goal or strategy showing in place here, at least to me. If you follow S2 Underground, which you should, he and his team do phenomenal work. He's indicating that, well, the target list, as we work down this target list, the places that have been hit so far indicate a ground invasion is a possible goal. In other words, if you wanted to prepare for a ground invasion, you would hit all of these targets, which is, again, logical. But I think those targets would also be consistent with a goal to just degrade the forces or the capability of the Iranian armed forces in general, significantly degrade them. So I don't really know that we can read too much into that. I don't think so, but your mileage may vary. I think he may be spot on that this is, some type of ground plan that is in place, some limited incursion kind of thing. I don't know. As I said, I could be completely off base here and totally underestimate the phase of end time apocalyptic accelerationist fever dream that we're in. I just don't see it manifesting into anything more than what we've been getting so far. Maybe, as I mentioned last week, with some kind of big grand finale. Bombing missions over a couple of days at the end of it. But I don't know, take all that for what it's worth. Let's move on kind of away from the overt assessment of the situation. Because again, there's really not anything new development-wise to talk about. But let's talk about just kind of broadly on a topic that is related to this and tied into it, but is perhaps a cause of the symptoms that we're seeing play out here. That topic is about leadership and failure, and how failure is seen and handled and analyzed in our part of Western culture, because this is something that is maybe isolated to the U.S. And the British Commonwealth countries. I don't know that you see it so much in other European countries or Western countries, but it's something that is very much a part of our business world, and it's quite vicious in the military in particular, and in the political realm as well. The Germans came up with a concept called mission goals or mission command, and it's highly successful at low levels leadership. It seems to have trouble breaking into the higher levels of leadership, but I think it's quite powerful in the lower levels, and it's something that British and American militaries, well, they talk a lot of lip service to it, and they talk about implementing it, but it never quite gets there. The concept is when leading a team, you do not issue orders and tell people how you want them to achieve those orders and micromanage them. In mission command, you give them desired goals or desired outcomes, and you allow them to achieve those outcomes with a broad leeway, within the guidelines of your organization, but using their own initiative. Now, that all sounds very good on paper, and it gets a lot of people excited, and they want to adopt that kind of thinking because it is very successful. And then it comes time to actually put it into place and begin to function in that kind of environment, and almost immediately after the first problems occur, the idea goes out the window, and all the bad habits and finger pointing and backstabbing and all that stuff, just comes back into play. So why is that? Well, because we do not have a culture that accepts safe failure and learns from them, meaning that we do not train leaders by letting them fail in a safe way and then teaching them on those failures. We tend to have these two ends of the spectrum when it comes to an organization or an environment. We tell people that we have open door policies and we want people to show initiative and think for themselves, but when they do that and they make a mistake, we do one of two things depending on what kind of culture you have in your organization. We either completely ignore that failure and excuse it. It's somebody's truth or somebody's struggle or whatever woke term is du jour, for the day. And then we move on and we just take the L and pretend like it didn't happen. We don't learn anything from any of that. And at the other end of the line, we completely roast somebody, just grill them when they fail, and in worst case, fire them. And the first scenario breeds an environment where nothing gets done, nothing is achieved. There's no new thinking, and there's no new way to do anything, because even if the old way failed last time, well, that doesn't mean it won't work this time. So we just keep doing the same old things over and over because they're comfortable and we expect them to work. And most often they will work some of the time, which kind of helps reinforce that behavior and that mindset. But it's a culture of mediocrity and low achievement. And the second scenario breeds an environment where nothing happens because everyone is living in fear of making a mistake. We keep doing things that worked because they were successful last time, and no one got killed for it, no one got hurt or whatever. So why take the risk or, destroy your career doing something new and innovative? If we do make a mistake, then we have to do everything that we can to cover that mistake or to push the blame off onto somebody else. And this leads to the oft-quoted line of shit rolling downhill. Now, I would like to think that the minority of companies and political organizations have these extremes as their culture, and that most are somewhere kind of in the middle, but that's still an unhealthy situation. Now, I got no evidence to support this, but I would suspect that if we were to look at the companies that were really pushing heavily into AI, we would find one of those two types of cultures in place. Now, something downstream of these extremes is how goals are set and measured. In the project world, we talk about SMART goals, meaning goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. It's an acronym, in project planning or project management. If you're in the corporate world today, most corporations will lay out, what they call corporate goals or corporate culture. They try to put these mission statements out, and they have these goals. It always seems to be like 5 goals or something like that, or 3 pillars of success. They couch it in all these nice sounding terms, and they publish those internally to management, and it kind of trickles down to employees. And for the most part, the employees just completely ignore it because it's HR corporate speak nonsense. But if you really look at the goals, you will notice something. They do not meet the 5 SMART metrics. They're vague, they're unmeasurable, they're easily achievable, completely irrelevant, and have no time scale. Now, this is on purpose. No one wants to be seen as a failure in either of the types of cultures that we talked about. So if we set the goals to be so amorphous and gaseous that no one can really say that anyone failed or that anyone did anything good or bad at all, well, then we can all just agree that we met our goals and pat ourselves on the back. And C-level executives get a bonus, and then they have their admins book the offsite where they'll take a vacation. Plan the goals for next year. And I suspect that most of you are nodding your heads right now because, you recognize some element of what I'm talking about here in your own environment, be that private sector or government. And that's the high-level view of things, but down at the lower levels, well, good things and bad things do happen. In a good organization that, succeeds in spite of its top leadership, the good things outweigh the bad. In a bad organization, it's the other way around. And I say all that, it's kind of a catch-all term because there's no good or bad organizations. There's only good and bad leaders. So when I say good organization, I mean one that has more good leaders and bad, than bad, and so forth. So if you're down at the lower end of the food chain in a company, you may be set upon by a terrible leader who sees the goals that corporate has set as some kind of carte blanche to abuse you in some way, that they justify to enhance productivity. It's the beatings will continue until morale improves, as they say. But just because at the top level things are undefined and seen through these rose-colored glasses does not mean that life will be peachy and not miserable if you're some cube-dwelling servitor. Now that I've painted that pleasant picture, let's change the scene and talk about how things could be. In a culture of success and growth, leadership thinks about the future and thinks about building people. They think about developing junior leaders to one day be senior leaders. They're concerned about passing on these leadership positions to people who are capable and people who are stewards of the people that they serve. They grow people with grace and mercy. They allow them to learn through experience. And part of that experience is to learn how to deal with the failures and how to learn from them. They concern themselves with the training of their junior leaders, and they make sure that the training is built in such a way that it is not just checking boxes off a list. It's not something to be dreaded or dismissed as, irrelevant. Training needs to be something that junior leaders look forward to and embrace every opportunity that comes along. They need to be placed into decision-making positions in this training and allowed to succeed or fail on those decisions. And then they need to be assessed as a group in after-action discussions where the success or the failure is acknowledged and it's discussed so that everyone learns from it. That's how you build a proper leadership culture. And in most organizations these days, training is seen as, a horrible waste of funds. It's just necessary evil that's only done to get a discount on insurance or meet some kind of legal requirements. In other words, if they don't have to do it, they wouldn't do it. This is absolutely 100% wrong. It's wrong on every level of wrong that you can have. People are seen as a resource or a commodity, and they're not seen as an investment because most organizations are planning these days for a person to only be there for 2 or 3 years. So they expect them to come into the organization and be perfectly formed out of the womb, and they have no need to do anything to improve them or make them better because they're only renting that person for a short period of time. And this mode of thinking is pervasive, not just in corporate culture, but in the government and unfortunately in the military culture as well. And this is the thing that has to change in order to make America great again. Anyway, that is all I have time for this week. Like and subscribe. Come see us over on Nice Crew, Gab, and the Mothership site. Links are in the description, and I'll see you on the next episode.